you got to have a whole tool belt. I can't go in and install someone's telephone service with a screwdriver. But one thing everybody agrees on is we want broadband for everybody.
Welcome to another episode of the Community Broadband Bits podcast. I'm Christopher Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and I'm in St. Paul, Minnesota today, talking with Brent Christensen, the president and CEO of the Minnesota Telecom Alliance. Welcome back to the show, Brent.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me back. It's good to be back.
It's great to have you on. We're going to be talking about ACAM and extended ACAM, which is the alternative Connect America model. We'll explain what that is in a minute. Before then, just a little bit of quick history. What does the MTA do, the Minnesota Telecom Alliance?
So we're the trade association that represents what used to be traditional telephone companies and mainly rural broadband providers throughout Minnesota. We've got 41 active members, which holding companies, which operate over 70 companies throughout the state. And some of the most rural parts. Lumen's our biggest member, and our smallest member has 230 customers and everything in between. It's a mix of cooperatives, family-owned, commercial companies, publicly traded, privately held.
And among your members, I always think it's worth pointing this out. People don't always expect it. They often are offering the highest level of services, right? I mean, you're in very rural areas, but it's a high quality service.
Yeah, you look at the very first county in Minnesota that was completely fiber to the premises, Big Stone County, and they partnered with Federated Telephone, which is one of our members. And you look at the great work that Paul Bunyan has done up north, and Bevcom in the south, and KM Telecom and CAS, and I could go on and on. I mean,
sure, and CTC right in between,
and CCC right in between. Yeah, they get it. I mean, I always say that we have the fourth regulator. We're regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, by the Department of Commerce, the FCC, and the Attorney General. Well, the fifth regulator there is our consumer, and they'll come to our house if you're not doing something right. So that's the motivator for us.
That's something that we're going to come back to as we talk about this, because I think one of the concerns about the way this is moving forward is that this is the ACAM model is that it is non-competitive, in that it is like BEAD in theory anyone could apply. Although I feel like I don't know if maybe we'll have a bonus round if you want to talk about this later about how many of your members or what their responses to it are. I was just speaking with some folks, and I know that NTCA just had their conference, and sounds like there's a lot of people that are not planning to go after it. But at any rate, we'll talk about a lot of different aspects of the extended ACAM. I want to start by just offering something. I'll let you react to this, Brent.
Okay.
I often say that when the FCC was looking at a map of broadband in the United States circa 2013, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do for the Connect America Fund, and then also for ACAM, which is the alternative to the Connect America Fund, as I understand it. They looked at a map, and they saw that there was a bunch of places in Minnesota, in North Dakota, South Dakota, in Illinois, where a combination of cooperatives, local companies, for-profit, non-profit, a mix, had made amazing investments in fiber optics. And they said, look at all these areas where there's no investment. We need to throw as much money as possible at these people that refuse to invest in these areas. and so that's how the Connect America Fund came about, which I feel like was a massive waste of resources. And then separately, they created the ACAM model, and they put a bunch of money into the providers that I think had been doing a good job to let them do more of a good job. That's how I would explain this to my mom.
I'm not quite sure where to start, but
it's not the first time you said that about something I've said.
Yeah, but we still have these conversations, and I appreciate that fact. And if you want to go all the way back to Connect America Fund, the FCC took universal service money and for the first time ever diverted it from telephone to broadband. I don't think that they ever intended to fix the problem. They tried to learn how to fix the problem, if you will. And so that kind of put the training wheels on everything. They set Chris, you remember they set their standard at 10.1.
Yeah, it was 4.1 before that, right?
It was 4.1 before that, but then they upped it to 10.1. So the companies that got that were the larger price cap companies, and they did that. But then you look at some of the other things that happened, like Sunrise Township is my favorite example. That township was not going to be satisfied with 10.1. So they got together, they put their own money into it, and they worked with the provider, and they worked with who was getting CAF money, and they upped it. We have many examples where we use state dollars to dial that up and help that. Well, along that way, they figured out what works and what didn't, in my opinion. And that's when they came up with the alternative Connect America model. And so they went to, and what's different about those, I think it's very important for your listeners to understand the difference between the Connect America Fund and BEAD and Reconnect and all that other stuff. CAF 1, CAF 2, ACAM 1, ACAM 2, now Enhanced ACAM, that's all funded from the Universal Service Program. Those are given to ILEC areas to build out and build up their areas where they haven't necessarily, two things. One, they haven't necessarily made a case to a business case to make it work, or two, they're planning to do it over a period of time where they don't have to borrow as much money, and then they can make that case work. So I have an issue with the word refused, because they refused to build it because they didn't. It just wasn't going fast enough.
Okay, I'll grant you this. I would not say that I have evidence of anyone in Minnesota refusing to build. I have a deep skepticism that AT&T built in the Southeast, particularly in Mississippi. So for me, like, I think there are some, but I would not make that claim about anywhere in Minnesota that I know of.
And my dad used to say we're all interested in our own little pile of strawberries. Well, when it comes to broadband, my pile of strawberries is the state of Minnesota.
Sure.
And your experience is much farther than what mine is. So I'm not smart enough to debate you about those areas. I can talk to you about Minnesota's in our right. What I've seen in our companies.
Nonetheless, I think, when I would sum this up, a difference is Connect America Fund, many, many billions of dollars goes to the big providers for fairly limited results at best. And not that CenturyLink, Frontier necessarily broke the rules. They seem to have adhered to the rules, and the FCC has not found fault with them. Although I candidly would like to see the FCC shift more of its auditing into bigger companies and less onto the little companies, but sure. I think you can stand that. But Connect America Fund, is sort of that. ACAM comes along, and ACAM is focused on smaller providers. And you have run one of those, and you are intimately familiar with many of those across Minnesota and the upper Midwest more broadly. Those providers they're getting money, and they don't have to compete for it, and they don't have to worry about anyone else getting money in their area. The FCC requires them to build to under ACAM 25 megabits down, 3 megabits up. But most of them take that money and they say, we're building an infrastructure that could deliver, like anything, because they're building fiber optics. And so I feel like that's a pretty interesting turn.
Yeah, it is. And that, back to my point about the evolution, you go to CAF 1, then you went to CAF 2. CAF 1 was just, here's money, do something with it. And that's the 4.1. The CAF 2 comes along as 10.1 because they figured that out. By the time they got to ACAM in 2016 or 2017, that's when they realized we have to have some performance testing measures with it. So if you accepted that, you said you're going to build to locations, and here's what we're going to give you for a per location, and then you have to have performance testing. So that worked out. That worked out so well. They went into ACAM 2 and expanded it. Because in Minnesota, we had 14 companies that got the original ACAM offer, and then there was like 30 some that got an ACAM 2 offer.
And you're saying ACAM 2, and that's the exact same thing as extended ACAM.
No.
ACAM 2. I missed that there was an ACAM 2. So this is how knowledgeable I am, everyone.
Well, between the two of us, we're probably one smart person. So ACAM 2 was an offer that was given to companies that didn't qualify for ACAM 1 in the beginning, and they had different build out, and then they're working to sync up those two programs. But that money runs out in 2028. Originally, for ACAM 1 companies, it was going to go out in 2026, but they came along with ACAM 2, so they extended new offers to the ACAM 1 companies, extended out a little bit, but they bumped up the requirements and the number of locations. ACAM 1, the locations, at most you had 35 or 25.3, but you also had a lot of 10.1 locations, and you even had some 4.1 locations that you had to build. And like you said, in Minnesota, nobody built to that. Everybody's building much higher than that and pushing that out, because they put on, for the first time, performance testing requirements, that we had to test a sample of our installs. and we had to do it like for a 24-hour period for a week every quarter, and then they give us a new sample every quarter.
So they're picking who you're testing.
They pick who we test, and we don't pick that. And so you have to have a pretty reliable network because the latency and the speed tests and all that stuff. But I don't know of anybody in Minnesota that's failed a performance test. We've all passed, and so that's been good. So then Enhanced ACAM comes along, and then they could have just built on what they did, and they didn't. For political reasons, they added, they took out locations that had an unsubsidized provider, but they also built out in more locations. So, like in our area, in Christensen Communications area, we didn't get any funding for the town of Bedelia because they had at least 25.3, if not more, from us and from Comcast. Well, in the Enhanced, those are all off the table. But if there wasn't an unsubsidized competitor in there, we could have gotten money for that. We ended up saving enough money by doing a lot of the work ourselves that we were able to generate enough money that we could build out the town of Bedelia with fiber. So there's a lot of different strategies. You've got companies out there that will go out and borrow money, and they're just going to build it all at once and then pay for it along the way. You've got other companies that that don't want to take and service that debt, so they build as you go. Then they didn't go quite as fast as some of the other ones, but now you've got USF support, which is what that's intended to do, to move that needle faster.
If I recall correctly, you're not a debt guy. You're an anti-debt guy. But I'll just say that the last time we argued about it, I was right. Because if you had borrowed money long-term at that, you would be rich right now.
Well, okay, so you're right. I'm not a debt guy. But in June of 2020, I did go out and get a line of credit so that I could buy 3 and 4 years worth of fiber and stuff, because the supply chain issues were such a problem.
Right.
So I had to be a debt guy, even though I don't want to be a debt guy.
Mm-hmm. So I want to run back when you were mentioning the testing, and I was at a session of the MTA show in October, probably 2018 or 2019, and there was talk about how this testing was going to happen. And so I'm curious now. The nice thing about fiber, I assume, is you're putting in a brand new ONT that allows you to do testing without having to go to the user's home, but for other folks, is there any other way to do this? If you had done DSL upgrades, you would have to like go and knock on the door and ask them to put a box in their network or something like.
No, you still have to do that with fiber, because you can go to the ONT, but the ONT doesn't have enough of it doesn't have it built in to do the testing from the ONT. So you have to do it from well, in our case, like in many cases in Minnesota, we use Calix equipment. So you have to have a Gigacenter or Gigaspire in the location to be able to do that. Well, that was an added cost. But from that, we thought, well, people have a problem with buying routers and all that stuff. We could put a Gigaspire in a location and monetize that and charge them for managed Wi-Fi service where they don't have to worry about it, and we do. So we got a new revenue stream out of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
But that box is the only thing that's capable of doing that performance testing.
But so you don't have to interact with the homeowner at all, which is a big deal, because you don't want to do that.
No, but you could put a Gigaspire or other Adtran got a box, and other companies have boxes. You could put a box at the customer premise, and then you don't have to go out there ever again.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
To do that, so that makes it a little bit easier. But like I said, it turned into, well, how are we going to pay for this extra equipment? Hey, we could offer a new service, and it's
right.
Crazy how many people have taken the managed Wi-Fi.
Oh no, I believe it. Yeah, I mean, it's I have relatives who forget the Wi-Fi password and whatnot, and it's a lot nicer to make that phone call. Not only that, calling y'all to get it fixed, so you don't have to wait on hold forever to do it.
Right, great. Yeah, you better not, or they will come to your house. I'm not kidding about that. They do.
Well, I have I manage my own Wi-Fi, but if I didn't, I get it from a major cable company, and I would not enjoy calling them to have to reset it just because of the hassle of their customer service. But your members have much better customer service. So
thank you. They try. We try.
So okay, so where we are with the ACAM is they required 25.3, and most of the people are building out fiber to the home. Everyone in Minnesota, most people elsewhere, from everything that I've heard, everything that you've heard, right? Um,
Yeah, I can't tell you it's 100% in Minnesota because I don't know that, but it's pretty darn close. And those who didn't do fiber to the prem are pushing out fiber to the curb, and they're pushing. You have to push it out to get that service. So, and I believe most of our members are able to do way more than 25.3. I mean,
Now, the extended ACAM, for how that works, is it's a requirement to do 120, right? 100 down, 20 up.
yep,
And that is support then is until 2038.
correct. Yeah,
And
and
that's remarkable.
yeah,
That just
well,
seems so far away.
it is, but it you kind of you need that stability, at least for planning purposes, to plan it out. Now, why they picked 120, it would be nice if all the government um, programs would line up, because BEAD's requirements are 100 by 100. Reconnects I believe is 100 by 100 through the RUS program, and that's way different. So, in those programs, you can apply for those programs outside of your incumbent area, or you can be another provider. ACAM is strictly for incumbent providers that don't have an unsubsidized competitor in their area. And I will tell you, the companies had until last Friday to turn in their intent on whether they were going to accept it. And I just did a light internal poll of my 41 members and asked them to tell me if they were not taking it. I had 19 companies tell me they're not taking it.
Really?
Yeah, they're not going to take it because of the cut in support that they're going to get per year, and some of them have had plans. In my family company's case, we built our whole model around having everything built out and paid for by the time ACAM went away in 2028. Well, there was a 56% haircut in the support we were going to get, but it was over a longer period. So it is more money, but it's less per year. That doesn't help us service the debt. That doesn't help us get to where we need to be. With supply issues and all that other stuff, it just couldn't do it.
Now, that means that those areas will be eligible under BEAD. And so presumably those companies will either themselves be seeking BEAD dollars, or I think they'll be ceding that territory to someone else. I mean, to me, when I look around and I see what Charter and Comcast are doing in rural areas, I'm fairly shocked. Did not see that coming anytime in the past, but it strikes me that not only would they be potentially facing competitors, they'll be facing deep pocketed competitors who will be I guess I'm not going to say anything negative about them. I'll just say deep pocketed competitors.
We've been faced with this since 1996, and they got deeper pockets, but they have different areas of focus, and so I don't know that there are going to be a lot of competition for our member companies, and because of, like you've said many times, about our local support and all that stuff. So, but this is that's the world we live in now. I mean, this is, if we wanted this all built out, we could have done it like we did rural electrification. There were no competitors. There are areas, and you serve everybody in that area, and that's kind of the way that ACAM was set up. Okay, this is your incumbent area. You have to get this level of service to all these people that don't have it today. And probably weren't going to get it for a while because as far out and rural as they are. But that's not the model that they went with. They want competition, and there's a price to competition. And then sometimes that price is everybody's going to walk away from it and go, I don't want any part of that because somebody else could take it.
I think that there's a problem with first of all, I mean, obviously, I sort of, we danced around it a little bit, but 120, extrapolating that out, it's wild to me. Most people have a choice of faster speeds than that. I think I think across the United States, I'd be curious where it is on the upload side, but certainly most people have an internet access connection that offers them more than 100 megabits download because so many cable subscribers have that. The cable system, I think, offers, to most people 5 to 10 upload, although in a pretty soon it's going to be much more than that. To me, it's wild that they didn't at least have some sort of like step up or something over time.
Yeah, that would have made a lot of sense, and I don't fully grasp why they didn't. That's obviously political reasons and way above my pay grade, but it should be. I do agree with you. It should have been a ratcheted system over the time. But the problem is, as soon as you put any kind of speed in statute or in program, it's obsolete. I mean, you look at the aspirational goals Minnesota's had since the beginning. They don't dictate what the customer wants. The customer dictates it. And you've heard me say this before. I mean, our goal in our industry is always to be one step ahead of the customer's needs. If we're 2 steps ahead, we're at the bleeding edge and we can't pay for it. And if we're even with them, we're too late. So we have to be ready to provide those speeds when the customer wants. And I don't know why they didn't ratchet up either. That probably would. They had a heck of a time selling this program and the way they did it. I can't imagine how they would have done it when you get everybody involved in that.
Well, and the thing that I find puzzling is, I guess I find somewhat frustrating, is I approach things, I think, kind of like you were thinking about, talking about electrification. It was a universal program, right? And used a very specific approach involving monopoly service territories to get that. We did that with telephone for a while. We're not there anymore. But I feel like the FCC has, like, as an expert agency, I expect better from them. And what I'm concerned about is, I think, we see, TDS has been something I've been focused on lately because they're taking a bunch of EA, of the extended ACAM money. I was actually under the impression they were more of a price cap carrier. Like, this is like where, for me, like, it's a little bit fuzzy. Obviously they are not because they're still eligible here. And, I've run in with them and had some strong disagreements in the past. I think they've made great investments in a number of places. It's like a mix, like anything else. But there's areas where I'm familiar with some folks who have been planning to try to get fiber to everyone in a given area. And they were on a path to do it, they felt like. And now TDS is going to get the extended ACAM. And I would expect that TDS will build fiber out to a lot of people, but they're not going to build it out to the others. I think like, if you look at like the people that I think a small minority of the people will be left behind by TDS from what they are claiming in their statements to the press. But I think I know where some of those are going to be. And now those people aren't eligible for anything better. And this is just where I feel like there's a real breakdown in this program design to make sure that we're not leaving families behind unnecessarily.
Yeah, I don't know how you get around that. And I don't know what the answer to that is. In a competitive environment. TDS is one of my members and obviously one of the bigger ones, and they're not a price cap. And I've known them and their leadership for a very long time. They would not make that commitment if they weren't going to do it. So they're going to do it. And I believe that with you, that the answer is it's going to be fiber to almost everybody. And those that they can't get with fiber, they're going to be close enough. They're going to get a lot better speeds than what they're getting today. So that'll take care of that. For the other companies that, would have applied for a border-to-border broadband grant and overbuilt those areas, this is the game that we're playing, the rules we're playing the game under. So it's kind of the way it is. Well, on the one hand, I don't disagree with what you're saying. If TDS was going to just take the money and run, which I don't think they're going to do, I believe they're going to build out and do that. But on the other hand, for those companies that were going to, apply for an area that no longer, that business case doesn't make sense, I think there are other areas for them to go, and areas that aren't covered by the enhanced ACAM offer. So I think it what is it? Close one door, another window opens, and opportunities are there. So we got plenty of our state left to do. We did a tour in August with NTCA's foundation, and they brought in 16 DC Hill staffers from all over the country. And we did a tour of North Dakota and Minnesota, and showed these people who had never been, many of them had never even been to North Dakota or Minnesota. And we showed them around. Well, North Dakota is like 97% built out with fiber. Well, they can do that. They've had some, advantages that, that are unique to their situation and things that don't happen here. They don't have the land mass that we do, and they certainly don't have the population that we do. So we were a little bit behind in there. But if you look at the way the needle has moved, it's moving and it's going in the right direction. Mm-hmm. We're getting more and more people sign up. The problem is, how do we move that needle and we keep it going at a good pace without, throwing too much money at it all at once and cause the whole thing to collapse, so.
This is what I would expect. And so as we're winding down, I think we've covered the keys that I wanted to. And I appreciate you coming on for these conversations where, obviously I say things that you might disagree with and vice versa. What I would expect, and I think I'm curious how you react to this, is that I would expect to see more line extension programs in the future. This is the big bulk of funding, but we're missing people. The federal data is atrocious. At some point, maybe they'll realize that we're going to do the best we can. But there's going to be a lot of people, and some of those folks, in the extended ACAM, they might be left behind. But I think we'll see states filling in those gaps over time because it's so important to get people connected. That's what I would forecast for a realistic future.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I'm on board with that. Last year, we were able to pass a bill that had a low density higher match program that is part of the state border grant program. I think it's going to be that. Mainly because that was our idea, but you look at the business cases don't always make sense at a 50-50 match, and we all know that. But there's enough of those 50-50 grants out there that still work. So when's that tipping point? We've had that conversation since the beginning. Well, now we've got a low density program that's separate that will tip the scales on those business cases and get into those areas. And then I think the line extension is what the line extension program did that I didn't see coming is it identified pockets that otherwise would not have existed and we would not have seen to show where there's some need. So that's where the low density can come in and tip the scale in that business case. So I think you're right. You got to have a whole tool belt. I can't go in and install someone's telephone service with a screwdriver. I got to have a screwdriver. I got to side cutters. I got to have pliers. I got to have a wrench. I have all that stuff. It's the same thing here. The trick's going to be with all this federal money coming in Minnesota, how do we dial it in so that we get most bang for our buck? We're not duplicating efforts and we're not overbuilding projects instead of getting service to everybody. Because the one thing everybody agrees on is we want broadband for everybody, and we want border-to-border broadband. Everybody agrees to that.
Right. And actually, that does bring up one thing that I did want to mention, which is to be clear, like the federal data is deeply flawed. And there are homes that are not getting extended ACAM support because of a provider that has claimed service that they do not deliver. The FCC's process still allows providers to engage in egregious overstatement without any real fear of repercussions. And so you're dealing with that for reality.
We're working with the state of Minnesota right now. These numbers are not 100% accurate because the offers changed at the last minute a little bit. But earlier in September, end of August, beginning of September, when we had the first enhanced ACAM offer, we looked at the numbers and we identified over 20,000 locations where LTD Broadband had claimed that they could do 250 down and 250 up. They can do that on a point-to-point system. You can't do that in a broad area, and it took over those 20,831 locations off the map. That translated to $16,151,000 a year for 15 years. That's not coming into the state of Minnesota. That's not going to build out broadband. So it's not that it's not like RDOF where they came in and they fraudulently claim they take the money. Their fraudulent claims on their 477 reports, which are not even on their own website, took those locations off the map so other providers couldn't build to them.
A friend of mine lives in an area where LTD claims to offer 250 megabit. He went to sign up for it, and they said they're not within miles of him. They didn't say like, oh, we'd have to like they didn't even have a pole that could reach him with any equipment today. Yeah. And so they have just engaged in truly, from what I can tell, it does appear to be, fraudulent filings with the FCC.
Well, and I can't talk about our contested case at the Public Utilities Commission, but what I can do is say thank you to the Institute for filing comments, and we didn't coordinate any of that. You guys did that on your own, and we very much appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I've said before that you and I coordinating, usually we just end up arguing. So it doesn't work if we try to.
Hey, we've gotten a lot better. And honestly, Chris, I think that's because we both listen. And we've started off at polar opposites, and I don't think we're quite in the middle there, but we are in quite a few things. So
yeah,
focus on that, and and again, you got the same goal I do. I want to see broadband to every Minnesotan, and I want to see good broadband to them.
Yep. Yep. And we're moving in that direction. Yeah. I feel like we could do it faster, but we're doing it. So
yeah, we could do it faster, but again, we have a set construction season, so there's only so much we can build at a time. So we gotta get that rhythm, and I think we're really close. And I really have got to say great things about the Office of Broadband Development, and they get it. We just had a meeting with them. They came and presented to our members a week or two ago, and they understand the problems that we've got, which is a lot more than just money. I mean, we're having problems with all kinds of permitting and all other kind of government stuff that's getting in the way. And
yeah, well, that's another common challenge. Railroads, among others, bodies of water, I'm sure. Brent, really appreciate your time today. Thanks for walking us through the extended ACAM and talking about some of the what we think they got right, what they got wrong, and what people can expect.
Chris, I'm always happy to be on the show, and thank you very much for your invitation.
We have transcripts for this and other podcasts available at muninetworks.org/broadbandbits. Email us at podcast@muninetworks.org with your ideas for the show. Follow Chris on Twitter. His handle is @CommunityNets. Follow muninetworks.org stories on Twitter. The handle's @muninetworks. Subscribe to this and other podcasts from ILSR, including Building Local Power, Local Energy Rules, and the Composting for Community podcast. You can access them anywhere you get your podcasts. You can catch the latest important research from all of our initiatives if you subscribe to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support in any amount keeps us going. Thank you to Arnie Hughesby for the song Warm Duck Shuffle, licensed through Creative Commons. This was the Community Broadband Bits podcast. Thanks for listening.